Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, and today is once again that time where I look at a cancelled gaming platform. We have already looked at a range of others in depth before on this channel, such as the Sega Neptune, the Pluto and the Atari Panther. Today, on the other hand, we are going to look at a more recent cancelled project in the form of the Coleco Chameleon. If this is a system you are already familiar with, you may be well aware of the ridiculous amount of clickbait news style videos that were made about the platform, with every YouTuber under the sun wanting to give their opinions on the latest news that was unfolding. This though all now unfolded 2 years ago, and with the system's wave of momentum online seeming to be finally over, all the gossip and hyperbole around this subject seems to have subsided. I thought now would be a perfect time to create a depthy style video on the subject that seems to need a touch of Top Hat class restored to it. It's time to make the Coleco Chameleon clickbait again. Yeah. To many, the Coleco Chameleon is that sneaky and suspicious console that never was to be. This is the story about one of the most ridiculous scams I've ever heard about on the whole of the information superhighway, littered with false promises, price hikes, money saving dodgy dealings and virtually no games to speak of. Please open your ears and your minds to this tale of a cancelled console we're all so incredibly delighted never actually happened in the end. If we are going to be talking about the Coleco Chameleon, we first have to acknowledge the main man behind the project, known as Mike Kennedy. Mike Kennedy had prior involvement in gaming related projects, such as creating Retro Magazine and a website known as GameGavel.com. So with this behind him, it would make sense in some ways to market a retro games console. The Chameleon was supposedly inspired by consoles released during the second and fifth generation of consoles, and was apparently going to use cartridges for their game hardware. How twee! I mean, in this day and age of CDs and digital downloads, let's all revert back to cartridges, like that was ever realistically going to happen, eh? The system was announced in September of 2015, and thus would create an interesting 6-month journey which would end up raising around $3 million of most likely scammed money. Originally it was going to be called the Retro VGS before changing its name to the Coleco Chameleon, only to then change its name again to Retro Chameleon after Coleco Holdings pulled out of the project on the 8th of March 2016. Thus swiftly putting this monstrosity out of its misery before it even hatched. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the beginning, yeah! So let's now delve a little into the history of this diabolical creation and see what exactly happened. The Coleco Chameleon, or CC as I'm going to call it occasionally in this video, because let's face it, this thing doesn't deserve to be called by its formal pronoun. It began its life on Kickstarter. This was the first time the CC team came under fire, as they had to change the platform for crowdfunding from Kickstarter over to Indiegogo. The reason for this change set off early warning bells for the project. Mike Kennedy stated, "In addition, we have also had discussions with Kickstarter about their policy which requires hardware campaigns to show off explicit demonstrations of a prototype. We have since found a few running hardware campaigns on Kickstarter that show nothing of the sort and have questioned them about it, only to find you really don't need to show a working prototype. Just to be clear and upfront with backers so they know exactly where you are in the development process. We ask if they would then reword their policy to reflect this, and at this point they have not done so." So, as illustrated by this quote, Coleco were unable to provide Kickstarter with a working prototype, bringing the project into question whether a platform of any sorts exists in the first place. In addition to this, the CC team managed to upset more people by raising the entry-level price from $150 to a whopping $350, which wouldn't have even included the price of shipping. Oh, and the feature which would have allowed the console to have played retro games ended up being announced as a stretch goal. So basically, they wanted the public to pay them well over $3 million before they were going to include the main selling point of the platform, despite promising this was going to be one of the main features when the project was initially announced. Another broken promise was that the company failed to show any prototypes or design specs, which is a requirement for that kind of thing with Kickstarter apparently. Oh yeah, and their controller was actually just a third-party Wii U controller. Oh, and because this wouldn't be going online, there was going to be no way to receive updates or debugging software, if any problems arose with the hardware or software, which seems to be a must-have these days considering how many half-baked game titles are released. Before anyone even had a chance to look at much of the proposed hardware or games, there was an almost endless list of complaints. As time passed, it was looking like this event was truly something to go down in the history books. The Chameleon's developers initially advised they were planning to create a console and cartridges which were going to be a homage to the Atari Jaguar, but contain all new software and be able to play brand new games. They went so far as to actually say they were going to use the molds for the Jaguar as a cost-saving measure. They were going to integrate both 9-pin controllers as well as USB controllers, with the USB controller being shipped with the device. But as mentioned earlier, these were just modified third-party Wii U controllers. Some of the other promises made with this console was that it was going to be ridiculously compatible with many types of TVs, including HDMI, composite video and stereo RCA adapters, such as the 9-pin thing and the USB. Now there's not an awful lot I can say about games that were apparently going to be released on the Chameleon, because there only seems to be a handful. The Adventures of Tiny Knight, Sydney Hunter and The Cavers of Death, which were both going to be developed by Coleco themselves, prior to them withdrawing from this absolute debacle. There was also read-only memories by a company called Midboss, Songbringer by a firm called Wizard Foo, and a couple of other small games which are probably not worth mentioning, purely for creating content for this huge scam. A lot of the controversy arose formally around this console during the American International Toy Fair when the prototype was introduced. For example, it was shown using a SNES controller, and there was an awful lot of black electrical tape which was visible. According to Atari Age Forum, the prototype was nothing more than the motherboard of a Super Nintendo model SNS 101 inside of an Atari Jaguar case, using a flash cartridge to emulate Super NES games. In fact, when some people compared pictures of the CC's motherboard with that of the SNES, it was allegedly proved to be identical. After this, a regular person would probably call it quits, after being exposed to being involved with such a scandalous set of events. Mike Kennedy though was no quitter, and wanted to do everything in his power to make Coleco great again. So this was not yet the end of the Chameleon story. Regarding this previous incident, Kennedy had this to say: "It was the day before I was travelling to the toy fair that the person came over to my house with the toy fair prototype with these instructions to not show the back of the unit no matter what." But without any specific information as to why I shouldn't show it, I believed him and went to the show with that unit. During the show, we were accused of not having the system even plugged in, so I made the decision to take a photo of the back of the unit showing it was clearly plugged in. I didn't feel we had anything to hide. Then all hell broke loose and it was identified that SNES Mini parts or the whole PCB for a SNES Mini was inside the console's shell. I was left in a terrible spot at this point and had a decision to make that evening at the hotel. Do I take this thing apart and see what was in it and quit the show, or continue on with the show? Right or wrong, I continued with the toy fair, and it continued to impress people and the games were very favourably liked. Apparently, after these events unfolded, Mr. Kennedy later challenged the person who created this prototype. The response was that although the system was built using old SNES parts, it was still his software that was running on the console, making the prototype, in his opinion, 100% legitimate. In regard to this, Kennedy said, "Again, I believed him," and we moved forward. The next step going forward for the Chameleon was to show off the circuit board PCB inside a clear console casing. The intention with this was so that Mike Kennedy could show the real prototype to the world via Facebook. According to Kennedy, when he first emailed me with the images, he indicated this was our prototype, 100%. He even joked about how people online were trying to identify the boards in our shell, laughing and telling me they won't find it because it's our original work. Again, I believed him. At first, everything seemed to be fine, and it looked like Coleco had finally presented a real prototype to the world. After all, why would they attempt to show off the internals of this system through a clear shell? Unfortunately though, the system was quickly identified to be yet another fake put out by the company. Tech geeks established that this system was no more than a bloody DVR capture card of all things. The system literally had no gaming hardware inside it whatsoever, meaning that the images shown of the working system were entirely staged and completely misleading. Hilariously, this Facebook post was taken down almost immediately, as the analysis on Atari Age forums had began. Kennedy didn't mention when he realised this prototype was a fake. Kennedy reported that the mysterious person who apparently built it said that the real chips were located underneath the DVR board, which is one of the funniest excuses I think I've ever heard. Despite this though, Kennedy made the wise decision to end the Kickstarter campaign to re-evaluate this venture. Whether this mysterious person ever existed or whether all of this was concocted by Mike Kennedy is still unknown. Kennedy reports that he and the Chameleon's builder never met face to face, and he had no idea where he lived. Apparently this mysterious entity also came from a so-called checkered background. So I guess he liked ball games maybe. All of this mythos just continues to add fuel to the Coleco Chameleon fire. So, in regards to all of this, Mike Kennedy appears to be one of either two things. He could A, have ran one of the most poorly executed scams in history, or B, be one of the most gullible men and worst businessmen in the retro gaming community. What do you think? On the 2nd of March 2016, Coleco Holdings released an official statement on their Facebook page regarding the whole controversy and prototypes, advising they wanted independent bodies to review the prototypes and confirm if the allegations turned out to be true. They were going to withdraw their relationships with the CC team. This brings us nicely back to the 8th of March 2016, when Coleco, after everything, finally did withdraw from the project, with their official statement being, Retro has decided that the work that they have created is not sufficient to demonstrate at this time. Consequently, we can no longer proceed with the project, and the Chameleon project will be terminated. This separation is amicable. We wish Retro luck in the future. Ouch. The Coleco Chameleon team changed their name to the Retro Chameleon, but then closed their websites and all other social media pages. Further to this, as mentioned earlier in the video, another project of Mike Kennedy's was Retro Magazine. During the aftermath of this event, the managing editor of Retro Magazine, David Giltanan, decided to resign from his post and issue an explanation for doing so online. He issued the following statement and said, "I apologise for any ignorance on my part for not fully following through with my desire for the truth when speaking about the console. Instead, I allowed myself to become a vessel for misinformation, and for that I am again sorry. Those of you who believe we were simply trying to scam consumers or take advantage of the retro gaming community don't know the whole picture. There was no ill intent or maliciousness on the part of the team. All we had in mind was to make a modern day retro inspired console." As you can see from this statement, the editor clearly admits that they were trying to mislead the general public and were happily spreading fake news in an attempt to promote the console owned by their very own boss, Mike Kennedy. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of the Coleco Chameleon. Let us know in the comment section whether or not you believe that this project was an intentional scam. Scam or not though, we can at least say that the internet learned something from all of this. And that is never to back a project with such a lack of information ever again. Imagine if another console just like this was being marketed today. People would never fall for the exact same scam twice, eh? Thank you for watching today's video. Do not forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section and do not forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay notified whenever I release in-depth content just like this. Finally, my channel, Top Hat Gaming Man, is partly funded from my fantastic support and donations I receive from my lovely Patreon benefactors. So shout outs to Carl Johnson, Shizuka Kobayashi, Richard Clark, Michael Keneally, Greg Hooper, Harold Webb, Synth Spaces, Kevin Verheely, David Mountford, Andrew Bazanski, Agnes Garcia, Edward O'Reilly, Peter Dawn, Retail Archaeology, Tom Elliott and Mark S. Hines. And of course all of my other patrons as well. I would really struggle to make these videos without all of your kindness. It helps me out so much. If you too would like to support this channel, then make sure to check out my Patreon page. Cheerio!